Villa fans, both kinds, it's that time of year where the summer starts, and we know that the rumours are flying around, and we ask the question, who's going to be next to join the Villa? Aston Villa, just in case you're wondering. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the first summer edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. You thought that you had got rid of us after the long, hard season, and I was just listening to our predictions, but no, we are here, back with more Villa news, rumours, wild speculation, insight, maybe, occasionally. And it is quite apt that this is our first summer episode because at time of recording, it's pissing it down. So nothing signifies the summer more than the variable weather. But what doesn't vary is the fact that you can find us on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, where we will be keeping you updated with all the latest Villa news, rumours, speculation, some of which we may have created ourselves, polls, opinions, all there, as you would expect, all perfectly kept in order over the summer months. You can also check out our YouTube channel at Talk of the Trinity. You can delve into the archive of the season just gone. You can pick your favorite game, pick your favorite episode. We had some great chats with, fellow Villa fans abroad, teams of other Premier League teams, some of which we may or may not need to do grovelling apologies to next season when we said they may get relegated, and turns out they haven't. Who are we talking about? Go and check out the YouTube channel to find out. Also, you can, if you just like the audio version of our delightful podcast, check out our audio providers: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, Deezer, some probably startups that have already come into existence by the time you're listening to this. Some others that have probably crashed out of business by the time you come and listen to this, but you will find us if you hunt. And speaking of hunting and us hunting for the latest Villa news, we are recording this during the not international break, really, international week in terms of Nations League, World Cup qualifiers. So from a Villa perspective, at time recording, England are playing Germany. Of course, we're not watching that because there's no Villa fans. Well, there's no Villa fans playing, maybe. I don't think. Maybe Grealish is coming off the bench, perhaps. But there's no Villa players. So we don't care. Also, the fact that Germany might be winning may influence that. We will see what happens at the end of the game, whether Germany hold on for their win or whether there's a roaring comeback. So England, doesn't matter. Scotland, doesn't matter after McGinn. You can't blame him solely. But Scotland did not beat Ukraine. Spoiler alert. And a double spoiler alert, we can't even talk about Wales beating Ukraine because we haven't got any Welsh players in that squad, as far as I can recall. So we don't even get to talk about that. So our international news, in a very brief interlude, takes us to France, where Luca Digne has played and Camara made his debut for France. May or may not have been linked to the fact that he just joined Villa. And so obviously that was the sign of him arriving in the big time and getting his debut. Maybe not. I think we just got ahead of the curve in terms of that signing, which is why Villa fans were so excited when he was announced. And speaking of signings, which Villa fans were very excited by, Robin Olsen. Were you as excited as I just conveyed in audio and visual for those watching that? Was that the signing you were dreaming of and more?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. Speaking of signings, international breaks, just really quickly, Philippe Coutinho scored for Brazil the other night against Korea. And also, don't forget that Emi Martinez won that trophy that nobody cared about until Messi won it the other day. And people are Felicimania Arna, don't know, whatever it was called. And now people are saying, well, that's not a real cup. Ronaldo's won 2. Well, Ronaldo won the Nations League, and that's not a real cup either. So it's 1-1.
Well, if the Peace Cup counts as a real cup, then that we'll allow that.
Well, we've won that, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It definitely does. A prestigious award.
The Intertoto Cup, don't forget. We won that cup at that raffle that had Villa on it as well.
Yep.
But getting back to the question at hand, I would have preferred us to have signed Batman, but Robin Olsen is, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I felt that Olsen was at fault quite a bit for the Man City goals. I thought he could have done better with them, or at least made more of an effort. He made a good effort for Rodriguez, but I thought he could have done more with the Gundogan double. Would he have been the person that I wanted to join the Villa as backup goalkeeper? No, he wasn't. But you hear a lot of good things about him coming out of the training ground. Neil Cutler is happy with him. Gerrard is happy with him as well. He's got international pedigree, played quite well for Sweden the other night, making some great saves against Norway. So, yeah, if he's hardly going to play, is he really? Touch wood, hopefully not, because we want Martinez to be playing. Personally, though, I would have much preferred us to have either got somebody in who could challenge Martinez, and if Martinez slipped up, could come in and take over the role in goal with you feeling comfortable, rather than thinking, it's all right, I know he's dropped a clanger, but he'll be in goal next week. I think because healthy competition benefits everyone. Or we go and get somebody better than him. In my opinion, I would have liked us to have gone after either Ben Foster. I know he's getting on a bit, 36, 37, but local to the Midlands area.
He's been touting himself around to every single club in the Premier League, from what I could tell.
Oh, yeah, he has. And I'd happily sign him up for the Villa, or I would have done. 36, 37, he could offer that experience there. Not a bad goalkeeper still either. He's playing in a poor team for Watford with a dodgy defence in front of him. Imagine him with Diego Carlos in front of him, and I'm sure he'd be monstrous again. Plus, he needs to cross us off his Midlands list. Alternatively, Fraser Forster wouldn't have been a bad shout before he went and has he joined Tottenham yet, or is he on the verge of joining Tottenham?
Hasn't joined at time of recording.
Yeah, and then there's a couple of others, like, for example, Barcelona need a bit of a fire sale. Now, I know we're not going to go and get to Stargate, but Neto isn't a bad goalkeeper, maybe trying to lure him to the Premier League, and saying to him, if you do well, then you'll get in ahead of Martinez. And whilst there's probably a lot of Villa fans here, and probably a lot of Villa fans in Ireland, one in particular, who would be thinking, no, you just play Emmy, then I think it's a little bit narrow-minded in some ways. Dave, you're not narrow-minded, I love you to bits, mate, but I think if you can bring somebody in who's going to challenge and get that number one spot off him, or challenge for it, then it's only good for the club. And off air, you posed the question about Emi Martinez that Liam from the Qatar Lions had asked us in our WhatsApp group. And he said that if you had a big money bid for Emi Martinez, 18 million, for example, would you flog him? And if so, are you going to bring in Nick Pope or somebody else? I mean, Dave said no. He's messaged me. He's not very happy. I had to calm him down. He was going to leave the WhatsApp group. He was going to actually disband the Irish Lions because of it. He wasn't. But what do you reckon?
What, in terms of Nick Pope individually, I do think he's a really good goalie, as demonstrated by his one-man show when Burnley came to Villa Park at the penultimate game of last season. A shame for Burnley that they forgot to do the bits at the end of the season in their final game, which was not lose at home to Newcastle, and they weren't very good by all accounts, I personally was not watching the game because I was viewing other debacles, or whichever word you want to use, that were occurring in nearby Manchester at the time. Where I'd go with Nick Pope is not really to definitely sidestep your question. It's not really based on whether I think Nick Pope is a good goalie, because I think he is. And I think in terms of last season, I put him in the top 6 in terms of goalies in the Premier League. It would be more, do you take the gamble in terms of, evidently prices for Championship players tend to be lower, but since parachute payments have come in, the need for Championship clubs to immediately sell their best players has reduced, especially in that first 6 months, 12 months, because the financial hit isn't as much. I mean, the parachute payment's gone for 3 years, but in the first year, if you haven't come straight back up and you're still in the Championship for a second season, players start agitating for a move if they think they're Premier League quality. So with Nick Pope, it's whether you take the gamble that Burnley aren't going to come straight back up, or they're going to struggle at the start of the season, and whether we could get him for even less than what we would get for what we'd have to pay for him now. And then balance against that is whether somebody else is going to come in to take him to be first choice in the meantime. I mean, personally, I think Burnley are going to struggle next season. I don't think they're coming up. I think they're in a bit of trouble off the field as well as on the field. So in terms of, in pure economic sense, say, what would you say the value of Martinez was if we were going to go and sell him? You'd think at least 60, you'd say. Realistically, probably higher if we can hang on a good day. If we went to Burnley in this summer to get Pope, I don't think they'd sell for less than 30. I don't think that they will still have him. I mean, I'm looking in terms of when Pickford went from Sunderland to Everton. That was for 25, and that was 5 years ago. So I'd anticipate. And that was when Sunderland thought they were going to come back up, wasn't it? That didn't work out well for Sunderland. I remember. So I think the price for Pope is 30 million. In terms of, if you look at the pure numbers, 30 million swap, you made a 50 million profit. Isn't that great? I probably wouldn't do it at this stage. If come January or next summer, it's 80 million for Martinez, 10 million for Pope, then I do think things get a bit more finely balanced towards, do you do it for pure economic reasons? Because I do think it would be, in terms of, I wouldn't sell Martinez if regardless of the money that was thrown at him, if there wasn't somebody as good, if not better, to come in. Because I think in terms of, for historic footballing reasons, positions 2 to 11, if they have a bad game and then they get dropped for the following game, nobody really raises much of an eyebrow. And in terms of, they can go back in next game. For the goalie, dropping your goalie is like, oh no, it's really bad to drop your goalie. You need consistency in the goalkeeping position. You shouldn't really chop and change. So in terms of Martinez, unless you get somebody better, then I wouldn't sell him anyway, because I don't think psychology wise you're going to keep swapping the goalie. Which then brings us full circle to the original question, or the original kind of teaser that we floated, in terms of, do you get a goalie who you think is going to challenge for the number 1 spot, or do you just get somebody who's a competent kind of understudy? I mean, I'm sure there's questions from Villa fans as regard whether Olsen's a competent understudy or not, based on what we've seen. And I didn't have this thought going on air, but when I heard you going through it and talking about it, the thought that sprung to my mind is, like American football and a quarterback, generally you don't swap your quarterback unless they're absolutely terrible and they're tanking, and then it's seen as, once you're out, kind of, as it were. And there's some teams which have kind of 2 quarterbacks which are kind of near each other, and you get some teams where the quarterback the first choice quarterback is up there and then the reserve quarterback is back there, because it's almost seen as an insult to have a really good backup quarterback to your first choice in some instances, like in terms of going slightly off into the American side of football. For example, you've never really had, in terms of Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, or big name quarterbacks don't really have competition, because it's like we're playing every week regardless, because, you know, we're that bigger name and we've been that good. And it's almost a controversy when, you know, especially in Aaron Rodgers' case, when they drafted somebody to go and replace him. That's a whole different podcast, NFL podcast. But in terms of, would I get Pope in to replace Martinez? Not now, not this summer, unless Martinez said, I'm not playing for you anymore. You know, I won that award and I'm now deserving of a higher stage. I think in terms of next summer, Martinez, I think there's, you know, he's demonstrated loyalty to us so far. I mean, he's been there two full seasons. If we're not in Europe, there will eventually come a stage that somebody's going to come in with some money and go somewhere else. If we're looking like we're in that stage next summer and somebody like Pope is available for a lot less money, I'd make the jump then. So,
I mean, Martinez has mentioned Champions League football, hasn't he, in a recent interview, and how he wants that. So I get where you're coming from completely. And I think Martinez, you know, world-class goalkeeper, isn't he, really? He's won a number of trophies, both internationally and domestically. So, you know, you're looking at 80 million, because when you think that Kepa was 71 million, you'd be thinking Martinez is worth quite a bit more than that, because he's not going to demand to come on in the final. I'm very much of the ilk that, going back to your quarterback analogy, you should have two that are similar, that are very close, because the last thing you want to do is have the best goalie in goal 1 week, he gets injured, and then you've got to go down to Bourneville Bakery and get a gingerbread man and put it between the sticks and know full well that he ain't really going to do anything unless shots come at it, and it's going to be brittle. No. For me,
that's how you spent your Jubilee weekend, wasn't it?
Shooting at gingerbread man. Yeah. I think, I mean, from a Nick Pope point of view, do you take that gamble, or do you turn around to Burnley and say, look, you want 30 million for him. You're not going to get 30 million at the moment, but we will give you 20 million and you can keep him for the rest of the season so that he's first choice. He's carrying on playing football, but we can recall him at the drop of a hat. So if it comes to January and Martinez is injured, or he turns around and says, actually, Lionel wants me to go to PSG, you can just recall Pope. The other person who would be an interesting goalkeeper and with a good run of games, could do very well and has done very well previously, Dean Henderson. Man United, surplus to requirements there, you know, but maybe that's for another day. But anybody, I think most people are better than Robin Olsen. And whilst I'll support him when he's on the pitch and he's playing in the Carabao Cup away at Barrow, you know, I'd have preferred to have had somebody else who was actually going to challenge for that number 1 jersey.
Yeah, I'd say there's very few spots in the team which will continue to become apparent during the summer when we wildly speculate upon replacements. But I think there's very few places in our team where you'd say you wouldn't think we got much chance of getting somebody better in. Martinez is probably one of the maximum. Well, if you've been really, really generous, a maximum of 3. If you're being realistic, probably 2. Or if you've been a fan of a club that isn't Villa, he's the only one. So I think in terms of Martinez, he's a double special case. One, in terms of the position, is unique, and also his status as probably one of the 1, 2, or 3, however generous you're being, world class. So I think he is very difficult to replace, and I think almost he would be in terms of, and teams have done this. Leicester, Southampton are teams who have committed to the model of buy relatively low and then sell high. Regardless, I mean, for Leicester in particular and Southampton in particular, their best players sold for higher profit. I mean, it could be because mostly those players wanted to go kind of to higher clubs in the table, or, you know, in terms of not necessarily when Leicester in Kante went after they won the league, but, you know, in terms of prestige. So they've committed to the model. And I think for those clubs going to Leicester, Southampton, etc., when you're the player, is come and play for us for a couple of years. You know, you'll get your reputation up. Probably you might qualify for Europe. You know, we're aiming to qualify for Europe, but we won't stand in your way when a big club comes in, or at the end of, you know, we'll give you a 3-year deal. At the end of the 3 years, you get to go. And with Leicester, that seems to be happening with Tielemans. Appears to be the latest example at time recording, still at Leicester, but linked with Arsenal. And but I think for Villa, it would have to be a mind shift based on what the chairpersons have been saying, which is, you know, we're the club, we want to go on the up, we want to build, to switch mentality. Say, okay, we're going to be a stepping stone club. Doesn't fit with what kind of the message that the new ownership are trying to create, even though when you've been Villa fans for long enough, you know that eventually our biggest players will want to go at some point, and then eventually we do sell them. But we don't tell anybody that, even though we know that's true eventually. So Olsen, yeah, I mean, I think we can agree that he's not going to challenge Martinez for the first place. And Olsen must be quite happy about that fact. You know, he's coming to be back up. And should say, just Dave also very pleased. But speaking of people who weren't pleased with that suggestion of getting a goalkeeper in to challenge Martinez, were our Twitter followers. Because I think we ran that poll, and I think it was there was a clear majority in terms of getting a backup keeper who was not going to challenge Martinez and have him as the first choice. So other opinions are available, but the majority appear to be behind Martinez. And it's technically a transfer in. It's not a transfer, but I'm sure we paid some money. Another transfer that had tongues wagging, especially in terms of non-Villa fans, was the appointment of Neil Critchley as assistant manager after Michael Beale departed to become manager of QPR. The main point that was coming across from other fans was, why would somebody leave a job as a manager in the Championship to go and be an assistant, well, anywhere? Obviously, we're not in the mind of Neil Critchley, so we can't answer that question on his behalf. But firstly, do you think that's a good appointment after Beale going? And do you understand the motivation as to why he came to join the Gerrard revolution? Or is it as simple as saying he's mates with Gerrard?
Well, I think being mates with Stevie G has got a lot to do with it, though I don't think he had to, you know, I don't think that Steven Gerrard had to break into his house and tie his wife to the chair and threaten the dog for him to leave Blackpool. And that's no disrespect to Blackpool as a club. You know, they've done very well over the last couple of years, getting promoted and getting to a good position in the Championship. They wanted to play good, attractive, pressing football. Yeah, you know, it was definitely a shock, wasn't it, seeing that Neil Critchley had been appointed in regards to, what, isn't he the Blackpool manager? I had to go and have a look it up to see whether he'd actually left them at some point.
So did I.
You know.
I don't remember him leaving, but maybe I missed it.
Well, that was it. And it was out of the blue, or out of the claret and blue, which is what we like to do at the Villa. I think it is a little bit more than a cream egg. It's probably more like a chocolate orange out of the sky this time. And to think that the Villa fans were worried because of Michael Beale leaving and the legacy, if you like, that Michael Beale has even built for himself in such a short time or short career as a coach in general. You know, Gerrard's spoken very highly of him. He's gone all around the world, going and coaching in Brazil. Liverpool, Chelsea. There were links with him to Charlton as well. But being a London boy, QPR came knocking. He obviously felt that he could do something there. QPR did quite well last season as well.
I know. I should point out for geography fans that Charlton is also in London.
Oh yes, true. But shut up. Yeah, I think him for Beale, that's a great move for him, and you'd expect QPR to do quite well this season. And then to see that Critchley was coming in, you sort of think, okay, well, this is a fantastic appointment. It's somebody who has been a manager. It's someone who is only one of 16 coaches in the world with an elite qualification in coaching. He's worked with Gerrard before as part of the Liverpool youth setup. He's even coached the Liverpool team or managed the Liverpool team, albeit not their superstars, but he has done at the Villa. So managing and coaching at the Villa won't be new to him.
Nope.
Am I surprised that, or is it shocking that a manager from the Championship, a team who were bottom half, being honest, bottom half, but are doing, who have been doing quite well, as I said, has left to join what looks like an exciting project from the outside in the Premier League? And when you look at, if you were to ask, I think most football fans, name me a Premier League team who you think could upset the apple cart this season, our name and a name from the Northeast would probably be the two that were mentioned the most. I don't see it as that much of a shock, really, that he's decided to leave bottom half Championship for a potential top half European adventure at the Villa. And to be honest with you, I think there are probably more coaches like that if they had the opportunity to go to a Newcastle, to a West Ham, to an Arsenal, a Tottenham, any of the Sky Six, really, that they would do. And you wouldn't blame them either. The only ones who probably wouldn't are your Michael Beales, because they literally just landed the role there. Your Steve Bruce's obviously wouldn't, but I think that there'd be a couple of other managers who wouldn't have thought twice about coming and joining the mighty Aston Villa, to be honest with you. But great appointment, fits into the team nicely. Gerrard obviously knows what he's all about. And hopefully this sees us pushed on. And, I'll keep an eye out for QPR's results next year and hope that Michael Beale doesn't get sacked. But let's expect to see a few players maybe head to West London. I'm doing West London on loan.
I'll throw in a bit of wildest speculation in there. Do you think during the conversations between Critchley and Gerrard that Gerrard said, I'll put in a good word for you for the manager's job as if or when I leave for Liverpool in a few years?
Gerrard's not going to leave for Liverpool in a few years. Gerrard's going to, and I'm going to say this, I don't think Gerrard leaves for Liverpool. Not directly, anyway, leaves the Villa for Liverpool. I think that they go with their assistant manager, who they've got, who's highly rated. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Or I think I'd be more worried about England with Gerrard when Southgate inevitably gets sacked because he doesn't know how to play any less than 7 defensive players in a team at any one time,
well,
not including the defenders.
Yep, they're all right backs. So it appears to have done the trick. For those of you who have come with us on this journey at the start of the podcast, talking about the England-Germany game, England equalised with 2 minutes to go. We found that out live, finished 1-1. 7 right backs, 2 in goal. Obviously, did the job.
2 as a post and 1 as a crossbar. Yep. No, I don't think he would do. I think he'd take Critchley with him. I think, if anything, you've got more chance of Michael Beale coming across and becoming the Villa manager afterwards, However, going on about your fantasy conversations, which I'm sure you would daydreaming about, when you were waking up this morning, thinking about Stevie G and what he gets up to. How about this one? Does Steven Gerrard, or has Steven Gerrard turned around to Michael Beale and said, you can have so many players on loan from the Premier League. You're going to take, or you've got the option to take this player, this player, this player, this player, this player. And we'll see a lot of transfer activity going to QPR. And also, there's a really good kid, can't remember his name, at Blackpool, 17, 18-year-old. Are we likely to see Villa make a move for him?
I wouldn't be surprised if at least one Villa player goes on loan to QPR or Blackpool. I mean, QPR is probably front runners in terms of, because they've got Beale, and Blackpool may not be returning our calls currently after we took their manager. But yeah, I mean, I'd say in terms of Blackpool, they did a very good job in terms of, I think early on in the season, there was unlikely dreams of a playoff spot, kind of petered out a bit, but still mid-table in the Championship, certainly a long way away from the dark days that they'd had a few years before. So very well done to them, and hopefully they continue on their journey, notwithstanding the fact we nicked the manager. But as demonstrated with Cameron Archer last season, it's not necessarily the biggest clubs in the league who you want to be sending your players to on loan in the Championship. You want your players to go to clubs where you know they're going to play every week. You know there's going to... It depends on the position slightly, but in terms of, for a lot of players, you want the Championship to be a finishing school. I mean, literally in the case of Archer in terms of front of goal. But, in terms of having those battles every week, to kind of toughen yourself up for the Premier League, where you're probably not going to get kicked every week, but the intensity is a lot higher in the Premier League. So you want that in the Championship, and a team who are mid-table, it's perfect for that, because in terms of they're going to play. They're not playing in a team that gets battered every week, but they're in a team where if they play well, they win. And football cliche 101, they play well, they win. They play bad, they lose. But so Blackpool, QPR, it wouldn't be of too concern to me if we were sending some of our players who we thought, okay, next year could be in a chance with the first team squad at Villa there. And
so let's get a quick prediction, a really quick prediction. Seems you put me on the spot already today.
Yep.
QPR can get one player on loan from... Who do you see going to QPR on loan from Villa? I think one player at least will. Tell me a player who is going to be on loan at QPR next season from Villa.
I think depending on our transfer business, obviously, that's the big caveat I'm getting straight out in front for the prediction that's going to come next. I could see Tim. I think I think it'd be a good, famous last words. And obviously I haven't been at the training ground at QPR. I think that would be a good fit in terms of, that's the type of team you want a defensive midfielder in, kind of a battle kind of every week. So yeah, I wouldn't be Tim. There's my outlandish prediction. Tim to QPR when we get a defensive midfielder in.
Okay. Well, we have, haven't we? We got Booba in. But yeah, I know what you mean. I'm going to go with Kessler Hayden.
Yep, that's a good shout.
He needs Championship football. I was thinking about Finn Azaz. There's a lot of talk about how well he's done. Both, he did well at Newport last year. Got prestigious awards, and recommendations. I know what I mean. Highly thought of within the league, so he needs that step up. Maybe it's a bit too much of a jump for Ian Reiki, who played for two teams that got promotion.
Yep.
from the conference. So if you want to get back into the Football League, I'm looking at you, Ryan Reynolds. Come and have a chat. Yep. Get Reiki in on the loan.
No, I'm going to throw a final bit of wildler speculation at you in terms of loans in the Championship before we move on.
Yeah.
Louis Barry at Blackpool.
Oh, Louis Barry. Yeah. Louis Barry at Preston. if they don't get Cameron back, you know, Cameron Archer played across the front three for Preston. So, and that's where Louis Barry can play. He can play as a lone strike cricket. He likes to drift in from the left as well. Maybe there. As you say, will Blackpool really be fielding our calls? And if they do, they're going to want some defensive reinforcements. Let's send them a Sil Swinkles. He's done well this year. And let's send them Bogard as well. They can have those too.
I say Blackpool might not be taking Villa calls, but they might take our calls. So if anybody in the Villa scouting, transfer, loan development department is listening, give us a call. We'll act as a middleman. You know, we'll take a reasonable fee. You know, a couple of tickets in the executive box all season. I think that's a fair price to get yourself through the Black.
I want an agent fee. I get about 10 million. Melee, hit me up.
Let's do it. You know, let's start the Barry to Blackpool bandwagon, or you know, he will thank us when he's at Blackpool Pleasure Beach going round the going round the roller coaster. But
he won't thank us for the fact that he's been dropped.
No.
There.
Yeah, no receipt, no returns policy. That's what we've got.
Anyway, speaking of Blackpool, and I'm gonna do the link now. Yeah, right. And I haven't even thought about it, but there we go. That's how much of a professional I am.
Yep.
Going from one pleasure beach to another, you know, big seaside beaches that you talk about, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and you've got the Copacabana, Brazilian pleasure beaches. We're starting to get a bit of a Brazilian contingent. Diego Carlos, we haven't spoke about him yet. Happy?
Yes, is a short answer. I think it's
a short question, to be fair.
Moving on. No, I'd say in terms of he's a statement signing, and also you briefly touched upon a potential rivalry we may have with a team in the Northeast. The fact that they bid almost double for him in January, got turned down, and we've got him for a lot less is funny. And I'm sure it'll be the first of many but it's not the first of skirmishes we've had. There's going to be plenty more along the way. I think it's symbolic of what we touched upon previously, that the policy under Dean Smith of buying young to develop for a few years, maybe the Leicester Southampton kind of policy, that's gone. That's out the window, confirmed. Buying somebody who's in their prime in terms of, you think you might get, if you get 3 years, I think people are going to be happy, especially if those 3 years end in Europe. You know, qualification. Well, if you're in Brazil on holiday, then outside of Europe, you've done very well. But it's another symbol, really, of Gerrard and his name attracting players. I mean, in terms of you don't get players in their conference, their first press conference saying, "Oh, I thought the manager was a tit, but I decided to join anyway." So you're always going to get positivity in terms of your managerial point. But you do believe that, you know, in terms of, if we had other managers in charge, would we have brought the same players? No, because they wouldn't have wanted to come. I think that's fair to say. So he can be used as another recruitment agent for bigger and better players. So yeah, I'm happy with the signing.
If any of our players were going to call Steven Gerrard a tit, you'd hope it would be Boubacar.
There you go. You've been thinking of that one for 5 minutes. If you've been watching the YouTube version, you've literally seen the genesis of that joke go through Mr. Trinity's mind, and then bang! Football's all about timing, you know, and that's perfect timing. I mean, in terms of, I don't know if we can top that in terms of talking about Diego, but I'll pass it over to you. But for your Diego comments, or I may sit back and wait for another link. The choice is yours.
Oh, I'm not doing any more links, mate. That's already fried my brain, as did that joke. Diego Carlos, I think you're spot on. You know, it's an older player. You want him in for a few years. We've beaten some rivals to his signature. It goes to show the pull that Steven Gerrard has got. It'd be interesting to see where he plays in the two centre-back roles, because obviously he's a right-footed defender. But he's been playing on the left side because of Koundé playing on the right side. So does that mean, or do fans start thinking, well, if he's brought him in and he plays on the left side, then it means that Tyrone Mings is leaving? Or does it mean, actually, no, we brought in a quality defender. We want more competition. We've now got 4 incredibly good Premier League or just incredibly good centre-backs on their day. Let's take it from there and see what happens, really. I think it's more the latter, though there are, of course, the Tyrone Mings links with Newcastle, who are after Nathan Ake and Sven Botman as well. I think if they do come knocking on our door for Tyrone, then there's more than enough reasons for us to want a lot of money for him.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to sell him, but when you are after a left-footed centre-half who's club captain and plays for England usually, the reason they haven't won any games and keep conceding goals in this Nations League, then you can probably demand quite a bit of money for him, despite what outsiders think in regards to his limitations. You know, we've seen the best of Tyrone. We're big Tyrone fans. You know,
I'd say, funnily enough, we can actually demand more money for Mings because he hasn't been in the squad for the 2 Nations League games, and we haven't kept a clean sheet in either. So we could say,
exactly.
Here's what you need. I'd say in terms of Diego, have we brought him in specifically to play left centre back? I don't think so. I think we've just brought him in because we've gone for the mantra of quality. And if that means he plays right centre back, he will play right centre back. I think in terms of if an offer comes in for Mings that is north of 40 million, Gerrard will think about it. Whether we agree with whether you'd sell him for that, I think it's a different question. But I get the impression that, Gerrard's not quite as sold on him enough to turn down the big bucks is kind of the impression I get. And then if we sell Mings, I think Diego will play left centre back. But I don't think he was brought in as a Mings won't play, for Villa again. I think if we haven't sold Mings before the start of next season, I would expect the opening day centre back partnership. I would expect it to be Mings and Diego. Although you could make an argument Chambers had a very good end of last season if you're going in terms of pure performances in that home stretch, you'd have Chambers in. But if Mings is there, I expect him still to play, I'd say. But he's the contrast to Martinez, who we talked about earlier. I don't think Mings is in that category of irreplaceable because we literally just have in terms of if we do sell him, probably for somebody. Obviously, we haven't watched, or I'm going to say, I won't speak on your behalf. I haven't watched Diego as much as I've watched Tyrone Mings, but from what I've seen, I'd say Diego's probably slightly better in terms of that. But obviously, I haven't seen him every week. But if Newcastle want to come and give us some money, I think we'd be tempted. And we have dissected transfers that have happened there. To conclude, let's go and get involved in the nature of the season and some speculation that we have seen from reputable and less reputable websites, Twitter, newspapers, and also a rumour which came about through a misunderstanding between ourselves over text, but I'm thrown in anyway, kind of at the end. So rumours that have had a bit more of a life over the last few months. Obviously, Basuma at Brighton. Talk as of time of recording is that we have, to use the phrase that I saw, moved on from Basuma. Of course, it could be cover. I mean, you just don't know at this time of season. Basuma appears to me, from what I've seen, like most things in modern life, 2 very stark divided camps in terms of would you go after Basuma? Some think he is the missing link, not of like humanity kind of going backwards, but in terms of top 6, guaranteed if you get Basuma, he's that good. And you got others who think he's not quite that good. And also, just having in my ear here from our legal team, can't say that? No? Okay. So top 6, or he's not quite good enough. And so some people are very disappointed that Bissouma is not at this stage close to joining Villa. Are you on that side of the camp in terms of a massive blow if we don't get him? Or do you think life goes on?
It's a big blow, but life does go on. I'm similar to Liam. Liam and myself in the January transfer window special both said we'd go after Bissouma. I think he would be a great signing for us. He'd probably get into that starting 11. He'd definitely challenge the players in the starting 11. Wouldn't really need that long to adapt to the team because they're playing in the Premier League. Do I think it's the missing link in getting into the top 6? No, I don't. Not at all. I think, though, that he gets us 8th, at least 8th, However, I'd be quite happy, and here's a different rumour that I am starting for you. I'd be happy with a Conor Gallagher if Chelsea were going to let him go. There's a lot of talk that Gallagher's evaluating his options there. I think he'd be a cracking signing for us and would eventually be the heir to the John McGinn throne at the Villa. So, yeah, I mean, Bissouma for me, if we can get him in and if we can get him for 20 to 30 million, even though he's only got a year left on his contract, yeah, fine. If Dougie's going to go, use whatever money we get for him and bring Bissouma in. Though, of course, there's now the Monaco rumours with Bissouma because of Tchouaméni joining Real Madrid for 100 million. So we'll see, but he would be a great signing.
Yep. We will keep an eye on that one over the course of the summer, and until when he goes onto his super yacht on Monaco to do the deal there. Speaking of another deal that doesn't look like it's happening, and we touched upon it during our end of season review briefly, Tarkowski. Doesn't look like we're going to be the club that bites for the rumoured £120,000 a week wages. I saw something in terms of Tarkowski and his relative status in the Premier League. You could probably split the Premier League into 3 different categories quite nicely. Probably about a third of the clubs where Tarkowski walks in to the starting lineup, a third where he's a good squad player, and then a third where he's not really getting anywhere near. Would you agree with that, or do you think Tarkowski's better, worse? And if you do agree with that rough third, I think that's 3/3 analogy, which third do you put Villa in terms of the impact that Tarkowski would make if we signed him?
I think you can really narrow that down even more, can't you? There's a third where he just doesn't get into the match day squad or he doesn't trouble anyone, and then the rest of the league, he's going to be sniffing in around that first team, as you say, or definitely in it. For us, if we're going by your thirds, then it's definitely the sniffing around the first team spaces. Very good defender. His distribution isn't exactly what Gerrard wants, which is why Gerrard's brought in Diego, and Chambers as well. Mings has got good distribution also, and Konsa can certainly play a pass out. I'd put him into that sort of bracket of he'd be challenging for a first team spot for us if we were to sell a centre back and bring him in. But I wouldn't sell anybody for him, not now. Not that we've set our stall, haven't we, really, with the calibre of signings that we're bringing in. And without being disrespectful to James Tarkowski, without wanting to alienate myself from his fan club and the Blackpool fans in one podcast, which would be a record for me, I think. I don't think he's quite good enough for us. I think Everton would be a great fit for him. I think he's better than potentially the Everton centre-backs. Either like when they're all on their day, he probably walks into their team. I think Everton will do a lot better next season once they sack Frank Lampard. There you go. There's even more people. No, I think they'll do much better next season anyway once they buy into his methods. We'll be playing in the top end of the Premier League, but not in the claret and blue of Aston Villa.
No, Everton is a club also I can see him going to. And
Yeah.
Frank Lampard, in that press conference, if he hasn't been sat by then, probably saying the word passion and determination about 14 times between the two. Speaking of, we're going back to France for our next rumour, and one whereby I had to look up myself in terms of this particular player. Quentin Merlin, I've probably pronounced that. I mean, first I thought you were talking about your Premier League sticker collection from '94, but he is a left back at Nantes. From what I can tell, from what I can see, he is a younger, much worse version of Luca Din, but with potential.
Yeah, he's got a few assists and whatnot this season. His attacking output is definitely up there from looking at the analysis. And I'm sure Gareth will run us some cheeky analysis for the next time he's on. He only made his debut at the start of last season. He's 20 years old.
Yep.
Left-footed, plays at left back, can play at right back as well. He's a bit of a, from what I understand, he's a cheaper alternative to Aaron Hickey, which is the player that Gerrard wants us to go after. If he comes in as a squad player, then fair enough, plays in a few of the games and whatnot, then great. I suppose we'll see as and when he signs the contract for us.
Yep.
Should he come?
Would you sign him over playing a left back from our reserve team?
I'd like to see Ben Christian push on. There's a lot of high hope over him, but he's a very versatile lad. He can play centre back and centre midfield. He played centre midfield when he scored in the Youth Cup final win over Liverpool. I always want to see the youngsters get promoted and have their chances. We haven't had enough youngsters come through the system at the Villa in the last 15, 20 years, really, So it's about time that we started bringing them through again and watching them develop and watching them represent us and play for us for a very long time. So preferably, I'd like to see a left back come through. However, if they're not ready yet and we have to send them out on loan for a year or two, bring them back in then to challenge Quinton as Luca Din is winding down his career, then that's win-win in a long-term strategy, isn't it?
Yep. Fully enough, I would do, if we were going to buy Merlin, I would do similar to what you suggested there. I'd loan him back to Nantes for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then if he plays well for Nantes and we don't want him, then we're probably going to be able to sell him to somebody else for more money, kind of the Man City method of making money. Or if he's good enough, we slot him in. But another under the speculation tree at this stage, and one that is probably more under the speculation tree, and which led to our comedic misunderstanding prior to going on air. Moses Keane, who used to play for Everton, currently of Juventus. There's one of those probably fourth-hand Twitter links suggesting he may be involved in a swap deal with Dougie Luiz. Obviously, we're not going to comment on whether we think that rumour is viable because we've got no idea. But in terms of Keane, would you be keen to have him at Villa, or would you be haunted by what happened or didn't really happen at Everton?
I would rather have the original Moses, but I think he would split opinion.
Yeah, like what you did there.
Thank you. I'd rather have Victor Moses as well. Moses Keane, no, not for me. We've got Cameron Archer, who we can bring through if we need a third choice striker, or go and get somebody else in. Suarez is still out there, whilst I don't think that will necessarily happen. There's plenty of other strikers that we can go after. So no, Moses Keane, I'm not keen on him.
And then final player, who, as far as we can tell, hasn't been linked with Villa, but who I thought you were talking about when you said Moses, Victor Moses, who was at Spartak Moscow on loan. Can't say what's going on over there either. Okay. Things are happening in Russia. He's still at Chelsea, I think. He's still on the books at Chelsea, from what I could tell. I might be wrong on that. But he was at Chelsea back in the day on the books. So he has experience of the Premiership. Would you go for Victor Moses
No,
on a free?
no. Isn't he at Inter Milan? Who
Spartak.
knows?
I think he has been. He may have been previously, but Spartak Moscow would last club he was at, because there was during the course of the season, UEFA and FIFA, maybe both, gave dispensation for players from Russia to go and join teams on a free outside of the transfer window. But the Premier League said they wouldn't register any players from Russia, because funnily enough, Burnley, I think, were linked with him. So it's a no to Moses.
No,
As far as we can tell, not linked with him. One, that a comedic misunderstanding we've thrown out, but based on how Twitter works, we will see our names in the Birmingham Mail in a couple of days with this link. So you literally heard it here first. And speaking of things that you can hear first at Talk of the Trinity, you can hear our audio podcast first if you go on our audio providers: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google. FanHub was one I forgot earlier. There's some others I've no doubt forgotten, but you're already familiar with them. You've got your listening module of choice. Or you can be first with our breaking news, breaking opinions, transfer rumors, polls, general chicanery on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity. Or you can watch events unfold quite literally on our YouTube channel at Talk of the Trinity, where you can view our podcasts, old and new, some of which you can see us in the flesh, some of which you can't. But in order to find out which ones, you got to watch them all. So we will leave you to do that. And I will leave you, before passing over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts, to say, well, this is the first of our summer edition, and plenty to talk about, even though in the grand scheme of things, perhaps not a lot happened. And anything, there's probably quite a bit more to happen during the course of the summer. But we'll be here with that wild ride. I'll be back next week with Mr. Trinity himself. But in the meantime, thanks very much for listening, and be with you again soon.
Yeah, just to reiterate everything that Baz just said, thank you very much for listening, for watching, for downloading, for commenting, for following us, for retweeting us, for doing absolutely everything that you are to support us. You know, the tens of you who are our regulars, it is very much appreciated. A big congratulations to one of our friends of the show. I won't say why just yet, just in case they haven't mentioned either. But one other thing I would like to offer on behalf of myself and Baz is our full 100% claret and blue support to Connor Sherry, who is receiving some not very nice attention at the moment. Connor, you know, there's plenty of Villa fans all around the world. There's millions and billions of them, mate. People are very jealous of you because you are the captain of such a great club, and you should be proud of who you are, what you represent as well. Mate, you've got our support, you've got the whole Villa family support, but if ever you need to talk, there's 100 million billion of us that you can turn to. Until next time, now, let's see who we're going to be signing. Is it going to be one of Russell's German fancies? Is it going to be Bissouma and make Liam Qatar over the moon? Who knows? Maybe it will be Victor Moses, Victor Noses, Victor Meldrew. Could be anybody. But until then, cheers to our, thank you very much. I'm Villa till I die. Up the Villa.